Hey guys, so we're going to start talking decimals today, and there are some things that I'm going to have you work on in your book, but I found some things that I would be using in addition to the book to help kind of introduce them. So you're going to learn about tenths and hundredths like we did with fractions, but now we're going to learn how to write them and read them in decimal form. So one of the best ways and easiest ways for kids to understand decimals is to think about money, something we all know and sometimes love. So with money, I found a place value chart that includes whole numbers up to hundreds, like a $100 bill, tens, like a $10 bill, ones, like a $1 bill, and then when we get into the decimal parts, then we're talking about change. Dimes represent tenths because you need 10 dimes to make $1. Pennies represent hundredths because you need 100 pennies to make one whole or $1. So what we're going to be learning is how to record decimals, how to read them, and later on how to compare them. So if I had $200 with 5 $10 bills, 3 $1 bills, and then let's say I had 4 dimes and 2 pennies. This decimal symbol would be used to separate out the whole numbers from the decimal part. And you would read the whole number just like you would with any whole number, 253. But with the decimal point, you need to say the word, not add, and. So it's kind of like saying that you have these dollars and these cents. So the way that you would read this number is 253 and 42. So we don't know what the 42 represents until we name it. So if it's hundredths, like it happens to be here, you have to say hundredths. Otherwise, someone might think that you're talking about thousandths, millionths. It goes on. We don't get that far into decimals, but you have to say the last place of your decimal. So 253 and 42 hundredths would represent $253.42. So that's one way to think about decimals. In your book, it explores decimals compared to money. Is the family page is kind of the introduction, and they take a dollar and they talk about different things that it's equal to that would help relate to decimals. So 100 pennies is the same worth as 10 dimes, and they both equal $1. 100 pennies equals $1, 10 dimes equals $1. A penny, 1 penny, that is 1/100th of a dollar. So that's how we would represent it as a fraction. A dime is 1/10 of a dollar. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take the 1/100th, and we have to put that 1 in the hundredths place, which means we need a 0 in the tenths place. So it has 0.1, that would be 1 out of 10 of the equal parts. So that would be, they shaded in 10 pennies, and if you look, these bars are in 10 sections. And so 1 penny is 1/100th, but 1 row on this chart equals 1/10th, and so the 1 would go in the tenths place. Now if you put zeros to the right of your decimal, it does not change the value. If you put zeros in front or to the left, then it will change the value. Okay. So they talk about dividing it into hundredths when you would count individual pennies, and tenths when you would count rows of 10, kind of like with base 10 blocks. And then they talk about, well, could you use 5 hundredths of a penny? Absolutely. So you could do 10 hundredths, which is 1 row, plus another 10 hundredths. And then how about 5 more? So that would be 10, 25 out of 100, so it would be 25 hundredths. And because place value after the decimal point, like we talked about here, there's a decimal point, and then the first place is tenths, and the second place is hundredths. that would help you to write 25 hundredths. The 5 has to end in the hundredths place. Over here they talk about 75 hundredths, so they shaded in 75 of the pennies, and it would be 0.75, kind of like 75 cents. Down here they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows of 10. So that equals 5/10. That also equals 1/2. As far as pennies go, when you add up these decimals, 1/10 plus 1/10 plus 1/10 plus 1/10 plus 1/10, that would make 5/10. And then they added the 0 to the end to show that it's 50 out of 100 pennies. So 0.5, which is 5/10, is the same as 50 hundredths. It represents the same amount, because that 0 on the right doesn't change the value. Okay, so on these pages, you will be looking at the halves and fourths of the dollar written different ways, and it shows you different way. It's asking you to discuss the patterns that you see. So splitting a 5 in half, having rows, having full rows, and it's kind of showing you how these pennies represent fractions and will later be used for decimals. They can be written to equal the same amount. On the next page that you'll be assigned, it says to discuss the pattern you see in equivalent fractions, decimals, and mixed numbers. So this time it goes through more than one whole. So here's one whole dollar, or one whole set of 100 pennies, plus 25 more here, which would be 125 over 100. It would be one whole with 25 left over. They show you how to write that as a decimal, one whole dollar and 25 hundredths of the next dollar. Okay. So decimal place value with money, they gave me a set of dimes and a set of pennies that do not equal a dollar, by the way. There are no ones here because there are no dollars on here. And then it wants me to shade my dimes, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dimes. So I would shade in 7 bars. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That would represent 70 cents, or 70 out of 100 pennies, which is also 7 dimes. And pennies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 pennies. Again, this would be a row of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and now it's saying write it. So since I had no dollars, this would be like what I call a ghosty 0. It's there, but it doesn't really have a value. So to write it, I would write the 0. I would write the decimal point, and then I would count my bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I put 7 in the 10th place, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the 100th place, and there is my decimal. In money form, it would be 77 cents. As a decimal, it's 77 hundredths. Write the amount of money you counted in the correct space, then circle the correct sign that goes with it. So since there are no dollars, we don't need a dollar sign. Well, technically we could use it, but we could also say 0, actually we would use the dollar sign, 77 cents. $0.77. No dollars. But again, it's showing you that a whole divided into 10 parts represents tenths. So in place value, the ones place is to the left of the decimal, tenths is the first place past the decimal, and hundredths is the place to the right of that. And just like in place value with whole numbers, every time you take a jump to the right, it goes down by 10. As you go up to the left, it goes up by 10 times, that is.